double checking because I remember last time my Australian internet crapped out. So you can see me moving, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Working much better.
good. So yes, good to see you all. Thank you all for coming to the BOINC workshop. And yes, today I'll be presenting the BOINC Census results for 2022. Okay. I'd also like to tell people that there are a few QR codes in my slideshow if you'd like to get your phones out or get ready to take a screenshot. Just various links to access all the resources for the census. Okay, firstly, a little bit about myself. I'm an Australian larrikin. All right, I woke up at 3 a.m. today. I didn't really want to wake up at 3 a.m., but I'm here. I am a software developer. I mainly program in Python, but I also enjoy the other languages, and I regularly contribute to BOINC. I have been using BOINC, I think, ever since I was 13, so that's probably more than 7 years now I've been running BOINC. So let's talk about the census. I am a board member of the Science Commons Initiative, and in my contribution to BOINC and the SCI nonprofit, I decided to run the BOINC census and kick it off so that we can have a regular survey of the BOINC community every single year. And this data, we want to use this data to help the community and also the project admins figure out how to do things and what's going on in the community, and whether there's any particular trends that are either good or bad. And this is a survey, not a study. So all the data that I'm presenting here is not like fully scientific, but if you want to, I have published the results and you're able to access them at the link on the QR code on your screen. So what I'm doing here has been done before. There is a BOINC poll that was conducted way back in 2006, where we had a lot more contributors. So if you want to, you can go and check it out. I've got the link on the screen for you as well. So getting straight into it, let's take a look at our sample statistics. So starting with how many people we got about almost 1,100 responses and an 84% completion rate, which is pretty good. All the data that I have presented in the rest of the slide is based off of the 900-ish people who actually fully completed the form. And it's good to know that 99% of the people who completed the form have used BOINC. So let's check out the demographics. Some of these might not be too surprising. We do know from the poll in 2006 that the majority of the demographics are male. It is a very, very male-dominated community as far as the results go. It is also a very well-educated community as well. More than 2/3 of the people who responded to the form have tertiary education, which means university or higher. So university undergrad or university postgraduate, PhD and such. 31 to 50-year-olds make up the majority of the age group. And you can see that in the top right there, which produces a really nice, interesting graph. It was interesting to see that there is still a decent amount of young people who are in my age bracket, the 21 to 30-year-olds. So it's good to see that's there. And we want to kind of see a good upbringing of the kind of younger age groups as well, because that means we get more people and people in high school, people going through university who are interested in science. And in terms of where people come from, most of them are from the US and Europe. So let's talk about how BOINC is impacting on the community. So from what I gather from the poll, it is somewhat pessimistic. When we ask people, how much impact do you think your contribution is having? It's more or less some. They're saying, yeah, I have some impact. It's not a big impact. Some might argue that's what we want, because after all, what BOINC aims to do is collect a whole bunch of small computers around the world to make one big supercomputer. So a whole bunch of small impacts here and there will make one big impact. But as far as the rest of the poll goes, there are a couple other metrics that I don't have presented here, which go on to say that people really like to be engaged in what they're doing and know that they do have an impact. Seeing that they discovered a prime number, seeing that their project released a paper, seeing that a new pulsar was discovered is something that people want. In terms of where people get their energy sources, the majority is fossil fuels, and there were a lot of people who were not sure. So I'm hoping that the census actually brings that to light in people, and basically gets them to think about where their energy is coming from. In terms of how people contribute to BOINC, it was kind of interesting. So I asked two separate questions, and I should have probably done it in a different way. Have you supported a BOINC project financially? And have you supported a BOINC project non-financially? Non-financially being like, oh, yeah, you contributed a PR, did some code for them, maybe posted some, or did some volunteer work for them, but it's external to crunching. About 20% said that they did contribute financially, and 20% roundabout said that they did contribute non-financially. Further analysis needs to be done whether these are mutually exclusive, and I'll be changing up the question next, or rather this year, to better reflect that. Let's talk about exposure. So we asked about where people heard about BOINC, where they first came across it. A lot of people don't really know, but the rest of them, the majority said that they came from the SETI at Home era, when SETI at Home transitioned to BOINC. And I need to make a little bit more exceptions in the census to account for that. And then beyond that, people found it from a web search. So thinking going into the future, maybe SEO, search engine optimization, might be more of a focus if we want to get BOINC exposed to more people. And one really interesting thing that I wanted to point at is, when was the last time that you received an email from a project? Because I know that the very last time that I received an email was when I signed up to the World Community Grid newsletter, and I was getting information on what they were doing. People want to be notified about this stuff, and the most popular way that they want to be notified is via the BOINC manager. People want to go into their BOINC manager and see, oh, Einstein at Home just discovered a new pulsar. That's great. I'll crunch it some more. Or I've discovered, someone in the project's discovered a massive prime number. That's awesome. It keeps people engaged. And thinking about actually delivering this through email is probably a good idea too. We asked people whether they wanted to start a BOINC project. About 8% said yeah. And then we looked at the difficulties, and I think David Anderson pointed to this in his presentation earlier. The top two things are tech skills in actually getting the project started, and time, because researchers don't really have a lot of time. So yeah, nothing too out of the ordinary there. This one's a bit more controversial. We know within the community that BOINC compensation and paying people for their crunching is a controversial topic. So I decided to do a survey on it. Firstly, we asked people if they would crunch BOINC more if they were paid, and almost half said yes. And additionally, 80% said that they were thinking within that space and saying, maybe I would crunch more if I was contributed, but a third said it depends how. Then we asked people, do you know ways of being paper crunching? There are different initiatives that essentially incentivize people for crunching on BOINC, whether it be stuff like cryptocurrency, not-for-profits, and I think a bit of charity engine as well. Yeah, 2/3 of the community know that there are ways to be paid for crunching. So the community knows that it exists, and it seems to be on people's minds. So those are the two metrics that I got for how people want to be compensated. So in conclusion, the most important things that we found were that the majority of respondents were male and highly educated. Most people wanted to hear results and news from BOINC via the BOINC manager. people want to crunch projects that have a genuine impact on the world, and they want to know what impact they're having. And nearly half of all respondents said that they will run BOINC more if they were paid for it. I am still taking feedback for the census. If you have any feedback, I'm happy to share it with questions, or you can contact me in the BOINC Discord server. And if you want to, you can scan the QR code here. That'll take you to a link where you can put in your email address and get notified when the next census is happening. Disclaimer, it's happening in November this year. So get prepared for it. And yeah, thank you. And I am prepared to take some questions.
Great, thanks. I think David's got his hand up, so let's let him go first.
Yeah, a couple of things. So you said that people want to be notified. You mentioned both through email and through the account manager as notices. Do they want emails?
Yes, so I think emails, if I go back to the right slide, yes, was the third biggest option. So BOINC Manager was the first option that people wanted to be notified. Second was was via just their project webpage, and thirdly via email. And I know personally, I haven't received any email from a BOINC project ever since World Community Grid was doing their newsletter. And I know that I rarely get things coming in for the BOINC managers personally. Other people might have different levels of getting notified through the BOINC manager. But yeah, I think that was an interesting takeaway, where projects should start sending out more of their communications via the BOINC manager. I haven't run a project, so I don't know how hard that is to do. But yeah, that's what people said.
So through the manager is extremely easy to do. Projects just have to do it. Through email, BOINC has some fairly rich features for sending emails to volunteers. For example, you can send an email to volunteers who have registered in the past month but haven't completed any jobs yet, which normally indicates that they had some technical problem running the client. So there's a mechanism for sending emails to exactly those people, or people who contributed for a long time, but now we haven't heard from their computers in over a month. You can send emails specifically to those people. Projects, as far as I know, never use these features, but I think they're like really important for getting volunteers off the ground and retaining them. The second thing I wanted to mention is that, well, we did two polls back in the 2000s. The second one was a little bit more detailed in terms of the number of questions, and the other thing that we did in that poll was we asked people for their, I guess, their cross-project IDs on one or two projects, and that enabled us to collect data, not just their poll responses, but also data on how many computers they were running BOINC on, what fraction of time those computers were on, how many posts they had made on the message boards of those projects. So we were able to kind of correlate the poll responses with actual data about their participation in different ways. And that's I think makes the results a lot more meaningful.
Yeah, I do want to just catch you up on that. So yeah, with this census here, we tried to make it as least data intensive as possible. So we didn't want to get too precise information on demographics. We want to make it just as broad. We didn't collect any emails at all. But provided what you just said there, I might consider putting into the next census an opt-in thing or an optional thing saying, hey, if you give us your CPID for BOINC, we'll collect some data on the back end and then produce some extra statistics. But yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. So I think next up is Jack.
Hi, this has been an interesting part of the conversation because one of my interests actually has been studying how BOINC markets itself, and I'm getting an answer that not much. First question, Marcus, you said that people want to be compensated, or at least a majority would be interested in it. Were you able to dive into that in any more detail? What type of compensation were they interested in? Because that seems to be, there's been a lot of scattershot attempts to engage people that way, and I haven't been impressed by the results.
Yeah, so we didn't go into too much of depth into that. After all, we wanted to kind of keep this kind of census kind of broad. And we didn't want to really bring up anything too controversial, because there were quite a few people who actually filled out the form, and then at the end they said, you don't need to be collecting the country that I'm from, you don't need to be collecting my age group, even though we made it like very, very, very broad and not very specific. So maybe in come next census, we'll add something maybe in the miscellaneous section, saying, I don't know, how would you like to be rewarded for BOINC computations? Merchandise, cryptocurrency, money, some other form of compensation. But yeah, you are right to point out that we should probably get a bit more detail on this.
All right. And the second question, or maybe it's more an observation, is that David had pointed out that one of the barriers to entry has been just unfamiliarity with the technology. You've got often science researchers who aren't IT people, and they see something that's basically an infrastructure as a service kind of model, and thinking, oh, well, how do I get from where I want to be to using this thing? And I'm thinking those same people aren't going to be marketeers necessarily either. And is there anybody, is there any group within the community that really focuses on marketing or marketing support or outreach, except on a per project basis? Has there ever been discussion about providing support to to developers or actually to users, saying that we'll help you with that outreach to maintain that population of users, because otherwise they tend to evaporate over time?
Yeah, so I think we've seen a couple people in the community doing sorts of things like that. I know in a couple of other communities, there's been some people who have basically dedicated their entire lives to marketing the community. I think we could use a little bit more of that in the BOINC community. But you'll probably see in a later presentation by one of my colleagues from the Science Commons Initiative, where part of what we're trying to do at the Science Commons Initiative is try and promote BOINC a little bit more, get the word out there, get people, not only crunchers, possible crunchers, but also possible researchers too at universities, to check out the BOINC platform, take a look at it, and maybe join up to it. So there might be some things in the work, and you'll probably see it in a later presentation.
All right. Well, thank you. This was it was helpful. It kind of confirmed a couple suspicions, but it still was very useful. Thanks again.
No problem.